Wow, welcome to another episode of Student Sciences and Stakeholders, which is NCAS-M's new podcast that gives listeners the opportunity to learn all there is to know about NCAS-M from the most important people that make the center work, which is our students, our scientists, and our stakeholders. Today, I am excited to welcome a fellow Howard University instructor, Dr. Joseph Wilkins. His research focuses on remote sensing tools and air quality model development. Dr. Wilkins is one of the leading researchers in fire modeling community and has published manuscripts, spoke at technical conferences, and communicates his research across many government and academic institutions globally. That sounds exciting. I always love to hear from faculty members who aren't afraid to get outside of those journals and tell those stories. So thank you, Dr. Wilkins, for doing that. Why don't you just tell us a little bit about yourself, Dr. Wilkins?
Hey, thanks. A pleasure to be here. Appreciate you having me on. A little bit about me. So I've been in the science world since I was a kid, as long as I can remember. So I was one of those kids who used to just run out in the forest and just kind of play around with trees and test the bugs and all that good stuff. And so I've always had a love for nature and I've always had a love for the environment. So I kind of grew up in Louisville, Kentucky. So for those that don't know, that is one of the houses of the rubber town is what we call it. So it's about 30 to 60 power plants or rubber plants and different types of chemical plants all in one area. So I grew up right there in the heart of that area on the west side of Louisville. And the issue is I had asthma, so I couldn't go outside most of those days to enjoy what I enjoyed doing because I couldn't breathe half the time. So little old me, who's about 6 to 9 years old, decided I wanted to fight a wage of war against bad air pollution. And lo and behold, I ended up actually getting into that career. Didn't know it was a career field at the time, but I always knew I hated bad air quality. So, so that's kind of how I got into there. And then I matriculated into University of Louisville. As a college undergrad. And there I studied physics and then mathematics. And I eventually switched over from physics and mathematics to atmospheric science to be my primary major. And that program came about in 2009. And I was one of the first graduates of it. I was the first graduate of that program. And now it's still going on and everything's good there. And then I went on to grad school at St. Louis University to where I was able to kind of continue my want of working on air pollution and stuff using NASA data sets, and it was a grant from NASA to help me look at power plants and then forest fires. So that's kind of a short story about me. And then eventually I moved on to the EPA as a postdoc and then came to Howard shortly after.
I cannot tell you how heartwarming it has been to hear all the stories from faculty who were influenced by their childhood, and you have come on and showed that, you know, it's no different from you, and the importance of our childhood experiences really molding us into the people we are today. And what a story for you. All of them have been pretty unique, but yours is one that I think is critical as we are in this part of, you know, our global society where we're always thinking about the impacts of, you know, what we're doing, the impact of, you know, what we eat and what we throw away and what we build. And it's so good to hear that as a child, you could sense something not being right and you could feel it physically not being right. And you use that as a stepping stone for your career. So that is very wonderful to hear. So tell me a little bit about your day-to-day at Howard University, you as a researcher and you as an instructor.
Yeah, so thanks for that. My day-to-day is kind of wild. I didn't realize I'd be this busy, but it's awesomely busy, I would say. Most of my day, I tend to spend writing and in meetings. And so I spend quite a bit of time with students in my lab and working with them to help them matriculate through their projects as well as schoolwork during the year. And then I teach during the year as well, so that I do that from time to time. But a big brunt of what I do is write grants, and then I write manuscripts. So this is just different research articles, and then I have instruments that I work with, and then so sometimes I do that. And then I also have a bunch of models that I develop. And so I tend to spend a lot of time in front of the computer coding, and that's kind of most of my day.
So I'm going to call you a newbie on the grant. I just got off the phone with Dr. Gill, and he's about 15 years into the grant. I'm about 15 years into the grant, and you just got on the grant. So let's talk about that journey, and welcome.
Yeah. So I'm excited to be here. It was one of the things. I was recruited probably starting back in 2018 and then, the pandemic kind of happened, so things slowed down. And so while I was at the EPA, I was highly interested in here. And then I heard about the great thing NCAS-M was doing. And so I wanted to get down with this type of cause to help my own personal goals, which is bringing as many students of different diverse backgrounds and students who've been historically underrepresented in the sciences. And I know NCAS-M has been the world leader in that, especially in America. So that's one thing that attracted me here. And then the 1 year that I've been a part of this program, I've been able to reach probably 100 plus, 200 plus students through the program, or just different avenues that the program has funded for me to go to, from conferences and things like that. So I've been around the United States talking to students all throughout this, thanks to NCAS-M.
That's amazing. I was just thinking of the old slogan, each one, reach one, teach one, but you've taken that to a whole new level. Each one, reach one, teach 100. So that's pretty amazing. I know for me, I've had the opportunity at various moments in the grant to, be a very close mentor to students, to see their growth, to pull them into a research project and give them co-authorship, or even again, guide my last student in developing the last series of the podcast. Have you had an opportunity yet to really start to mentor?
Yeah, so I have a research group that I've been developing. It's about 8 students strong at this point, from undergrad all the way up to, PhDs and postdocs. And so I have quite a bit of mentoring that I've done through this program and other programs that I've developed at Howard. And so that's one of the biggest draws I have to this field, and joys I get out of this position. And for example, I was able to help a student who is a grad student create a project using data assimilation and machine learning. And she was able to present to Howard Research Month at the end of the year in spring, right before the semester ended. So that was a big joy and a great just kind of confirmation that I'm doing the right thing and I'm in the right place. So that was great.
Yeah, all your numbers are big. I've been around for a while, but I'm like 1 on 1. You're like 1 on 8. I mean, it's pretty amazing that I think, at least for me at Howard, and I'm sure you've probably only been at Howard a little while.
I've only been there for a year. So.
Yeah, and if you ever need any mentorship navigating through Howard, I'll help you there as well. But I think the biggest thing that I love about Howard University is not just the diversity in the faculty members, not just the diversity in the student body, which many people don't realize exists at HBCUs, but it's this desire to really reach and impact, and how much we do focus on reaching, listening, and impacting our student lives. And sometimes it just happens in the classroom quietly, as you might be teaching 30 or 150 or 20. But then there's these other moments outside of the classroom, again, where you might be 1-on-1 or you might be 1 on 8, and you're making these different types of impact that can really, reach and change someone's trajectory, as they matriculate through your university. And I think that's the biggest thing that I love so much about Howard, is the extra things that faculty member like you, Dr. Wilkins, do to get on grants and then share your resources, which I thank you for doing that. So I guess for me, I want to talk a little bit about, and this is a pie in the sky question, but I think it's important. And you have a different perspective than most of us as a new person on the grant. But how do you see the STEM field in the future as it relates to NCAS-M, as it relates to, you know, really understanding what's happening globally, understanding what's happening in your field, and what NCAS-M can do to really make an impact, or what you plan to do, which is probably more intriguing to hear as you're a new person on the ground. What do you plan to do to make a difference?
Yeah, so I really love that question, because that begs the whole reason why I'm here. And that is to increase the, I guess, African Americans, as well as Latinx communities, as well as other underserved communities, such as tribal communities, into the sciences. So what we've seen is that there's a huge change in our population structure, where a lot of us are becoming more mixed, more diverse, more in this and that in general. It's not just a monochromatic thing anymore. And we're trying to finally get the sciences to catch up with what our society actually looks like. And so as we matriculate into what, you know, science representing our actual communities that we serve, I would like to be the forefront, as well as NCAS-M, and continuing on pushing those folks through the system of academia. As we all know, it's kind of laborious and it's hard, but if we can show these folks that we've done it as minorities, and we've made it through all the hurdles and hoops, and we can make it a lot easier for the next generation. That's kind of what I want to do. And one of the biggest pushes of my program is to not only just give the folks the positions, but to train them to be great at those positions. As you know, underserved groups, we tend to have to do 10 times better just to get the same result. So if I could be that bridge to those students, that's what drives me. So for example, one thing we do in my group is I train all my students on how to program. This is something that's lacking across the board in all groups. And so if we can train our students to do that, that will give them a leg up. And this is something that we've heard from NASA, NOAA, all the large, funders, or DOE, all these groups have said the same thing. We need students that can program. And so we need students that can do math, computer work, and then talk about it. And so that's what we do in my group. We train those things. And NCAS-M is going to be a huge vehicle to help me out with that.
You know, I was just thinking about reviewing my students' resumes, and they've gotten so complex over the years. And there was this whole conversation about you never go over one page. Well, the students have gotten so sophisticated in how much they can get on a page, and even talking about their soft skills and talking about their computer skills and all of those things that, step outside of just the experience box. And it's wonderful to hear that you're acknowledging and understanding that, there's the education space, there's the experience space, but there's all these other little compartmentalized pieces that are on resumes from our students now that really, really make a difference. And adding to that really sets them apart from others in the group. So with that said, I just want to thank you so much for joining us, Dr. Joseph Wilkins, my fellow Bison of Howard University.
Hate you.
Yes, hopefully I'll see you around the yard sometime soon. And thank you everybody else for joining us for another episode of Student Scientists and Stakeholders. You can learn more about us by visiting our website at www.ncas-m.org. You can also follow us on socials at Twitter and Facebook at NCAS News. We also have an exciting YouTube channel with great content. We hope you see you there. And more importantly, our next episode, we will have a special guest that might surprise you. So thank you again, Dr. Wilkins, and I will see everyone very soon.